Hello there, I'm Nathalia Melo, your unfiltered fit BFF, mom of two turned CEO of a fitness empire. Someone who understands the struggles of trying to stay fit, sane, and sexy, all while juggling work, life, and motherhood. And this is the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. Follow along wherever you're listening and join me weekly as I help busy working moms just like you simplify their fitness journey so they can lose weight, regain their confidence, and feel sexy AF. It's time to stop living in the what ifs and hiding from the cameras. It's time to regain control over your body, feel sexy naked, and wear a bikini confidently. People already see you as a super confident woman, but it's time for you to feel the same way too. Let's go. Hello there. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm super excited to be here. I'm your host, Nathalia Melo. And before we get started into the topic today, which is we're going to be talking about the hard truths in the freedom of choice that so many are giving this freedom and this power away to everybody who does not understand the reality. So we're going to be talking about this today. But before we get there, I just want to give a huge shout out to every single one of you listening to this podcast. I've received a few messages from people asking how they can help me with the podcast and how they love that this podcast doesn't have ads. And yes, I am going to try and keep this podcast ad-free for as long as possible. And the best way for you to help me keep the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast this way is by sharing this episode or any other episode that you have listened to, that you found value, that you found helpful, that it spoke with you. Share it with a friend, share it on your social, share on your stories and tag me. I love, when I see messages come in from people that I personally know telling me how much an episode has spoken with them and has helped them see things from a different perspective. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast. I'm not saying that I do have the absolute truth. I do not. I love opening myself up to difficult conversations. And that's kind of why I started this podcast, because I had a lot going on in my head that I wanted to be able to talk about. And the characters on Instagram didn't really allow me to do that. And I was feeling very frustrated. I started the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. So if you want to help out a girl, help your friends, and keep this podcast completely ad-free, make sure that you hit that share button, share in your social, share with a friend, and do all the thing. And if you feel inclined to leave a review, I won't be big mad if you do that either. All right. Now that it kind of makes me feel like an official podcaster, asking you to share and leave a review and all of that, because that's what the podcasters do, right? We're going to go straight into it. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that is very close to my heart. And that for a very long time, I didn't understand why I had such a strong opinion about this topic that we're going to be discussing today. And all this started with a coaching call that I had. Y'all know that I'm a big fan of having coaches. I believe in working with someone who can help you speed track your path to success. And that's why I'm a big believer in coaching. So I was working with a life coach / trauma coach called Annie Yacht. And I might have butchered Annie's last name, so I apologize. But Annie is the bomb. She's awesome. And I was talking with Annie and, because I'm well aware, like I don't live in a bubble. I know that I can come across very aggressive with specific topics, but it comes from a place of being incredibly passionate about the power of change, about the power of becoming who you are meant to be. And whenever I see so many people wasting that away, it makes me incredibly frustrated because we only have one life, and how many more years of just existing, women especially, going to keep on living? Life is to be lived. And quite honestly, we don't even know if there is another one after this one. I don't care what you believe in, but we ultimately don't really know what is like on the other side of it. So I am going to make the best of the life that I have right now. And if there is another one, cool, I'm in. Sign me up. But if there isn't, I don't want to be on my deathbed, looking back and wishing that I could have done, should have done, or that I should have taken my power and my ability to make a better life for myself, not only from the financial side of things, but also from a quality of life standpoint, that I didn't do that. So I was talking with Annie, and whenever we start talking about and, try to pull down the layers, she looked at me, she's like, Nathalia, what makes you angry is because you know the power of choice, the power of making difficult decisions and knowing what is on the other side of making a hard decision and having the freedom to make that choice. And I'm like, holy shit, go, yes, that absolutely blew my mind. And it is such a simple kind of like observation. But for me, as a coach, as a person, as a wife, it has been absolutely life changing. And then I kind of start to think back about all the situations in my life that led to life changing moments came from very difficult choices. I think that the few most obvious one would be whenever I decided to pack up, drop out of law school in Brazil, sell my car and move to the United States with $350 in my pocket, 350, 400. I don't remember exactly how much that was. I had just turned 20 years old. And I looked at my mom and I'm like, yo, so, that degree that you've been very proud of me getting, yeah, that one, yeah, I'm quitting. I'm out. Can you imagine having that conversation with your Latino mom where I don't know how many of you are Latinos here, but like in Latino households, you basically have two options of career. You either become a doctor or you become a lawyer. I had chosen the path of becoming a lawyer. And then I was telling my mom that after she, had paid for my university for, halfway, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. That wasn't a conversation that I would like to have again. Let's just put it that way. But it had to be done. And I made that hard choice and I moved. And it was hard. If you want to hear more about it, there is an episode, I think it's episode 2 of this podcast, kind of tells you a little bit about that. That was a hard choice, but that led me to opening a lot of doors and a lot of experiences here in the United States. And then the other big choice that I remember making was my choice to compete. Like, I don't know how many of you have done a competition, especially competed at the Olympia level bodybuilding competition. That is hard. It requires a lot of your time. It requires a lot of your energy. It's hard, but I made the hard choice of going through with it. And I honored my choice every single day with every single training session that I did, because I knew that there was something on the other side of that in my heart. And I had the freedom to choose what I thought that it was best for me. And that is a power that I wouldn't want to give to anybody else. Other hard choice that I had to make after winning the Olympia, which is the biggest bodybuilding competition in the world, I moved to Northern Ireland to be with my now husband. But at the time, he wasn't my husband. He was just my boyfriend. And then shortly thereafter, I decided to step away from competing. But I made the choice of leaving behind everything that I knew and that I had lived for the past 10 years in Fort Lauderdale. And then I went to a completely different country with somebody that was my boyfriend and that I wasn't really sure if it was going to work out, but I was only going to know if it was going to work out or not if I tried. Imagine now, 13, 14 years later, if I looked back, I had not done that. I would not have the life that I have right now. I would not have the beautiful family that I have right now if it weren't for that hard choice that I made 13, 14, goodness knows how many years ago. But that choice had to be made. And it was a hard one. Moving back from Northern Ireland to the US with 2 small children. My kids were 9 months and Nico was just under 2. That was a hard choice. But it was a choice that, because we live in countries that allow us the freedom to decide what we want to do with our lives. So why am I talking about this? I'm going to talk about in the context of the United States because that's where I live and that's where I can speak about in a more contextual way. But we live in a country, the United States, that takes a lot of pride in its freedom. A lot of people have fought and died for us to have the freedom that we have today. Okay? Before I even start talking about this, I just want to make it very clear. This ain't a political conversation. You're never going to see me talking about politics. I don't do politics. I am team common sense. I think all politics are crooks. So there is that. Left, right, up, down, don't give a shit. This conversation right here is about what I see, regardless of political side. I got no side. I'm a circle. Ain't no right, left, up, and down. It's a circle. I'm team common sense. I'm like right down in the middle. Now that we got that over with, okay, let's go to our conversation. So, as women, we are very fortunate to live in a country that allow us the power of choice, the freedom to make a choice. And, you know, there is a big message out there, which I'm all about it. And we have Sarah, I can't pronounce her last name, Blache, that she's a guest in this podcast. And she talks a lot about feminine and masculine energy, which I am a big believer of. And you're going to understand why I'm talking about this because whenever it comes to women's freedom of choice, there is always that push and pull from men and some women that the man is the leader. Okay. The man is the leader. He should be making the decision. But there is a very big difference between leadership and dictatorship. There is a big difference when you see them in action, but what separates them on paper is just like a few words. And then what I see is a lot of women living on this illusion of leadership and partnership, but in reality, what they have is a dictatorship, which is sad given that we live in a country that allows us to have the freedom of choice. And this has nothing to do with masculine and feminine because I'm a big believer in many situations, letting my husband take the lead on many things. But there is a difference between being blindly guided. There is nothing wrong with asking questions about where you're going. Because what I see time and time again is women allowing themselves to be blindly guided. And then whenever they wake up, they are in a place that they never wanted to be in the first place. But because there is this constant message that you just have to follow the leadership of your husband. But if your husband is leading you into a path that you do not want to be, and you're not voicing what is and isn't important to you, it is your responsibility to speak up about your needs and wants. And as a leader, it is your husband's job to listen. I am not a big fan of the whole messaging of like a woman needs to be submissive and like follow the lead. No, if somebody's leading me down a fucking cliff, you better believe I ain't going. And I'm going to ask and be like, yo, asking for a friend. Actually, no, scratch that. Asking for myself. But what the fuck? Where is it that we're going? There is nothing wrong with questioning where that path is taking you. So, why am I talking about this today? Because there is this, again, this idea of a non existent dichotomy of leadership and submission or being submissive in a marriage and relationship that it's missing context. It's missing context because we have been given a freedom that a lot of women around the world don't have. And we're not taking advantage of the opportunity to ask questions. I am not saying don't have conversations. I am not saying just do whatever the fuck you want, because that's not a partnership. But I'm saying that it is your life. In the same way that we are being taught to, speak with our children, if you do have kids, be the leader for them, but at the same time, explain to them what's happening. Why is it that in a marriage, it needs to be some kind of blind following and leadership dynamic? You're probably curious why I am talking about this today. In the past week or so, I've had quite a few women that wanted to join my program, okay, the Powerhouse Academy. And whenever I spoke with them, these women were struggling. One of them was about to send a letter to her job. She is in a leadership position. She was contemplating and had crossed her mind to send a letter or a message or to request to be demoted or to take a step down in her career, because her confidence was so low that she didn't even think that she was worthy or that she was good enough to be in that position anymore, because she couldn't walk into a room with the same, what I call, bad bitch vibe. And for that reason, she was contemplating asking to be demoted in her career. All right. And that where she was, as far as her confidence within her body, was directly impacting her relationship, her marriage. Her husband had noticed that she was self-conscious about her body. That's one. And then there was another lady that I spoke to that said that she didn't know where her marriage was going to end, because just with one child, she was already resenting her husband because of how much of her she felt like he was being given, and how little control she had, and how that was impacting several aspects of her life, including her marriage, and that she could definitely see growing apart and not having a solid family foundation with her husband because of the resentment that she could feel brewing. And then the other one was a lady who told me that she had a very hard time after having her first child, that she eventually wanted to, start her own business and be her own boss within the career that she has chosen. She has a job right now, but she would like to go into being a contractor and working her own hours. And she told me that if things kept on going the way they're going right now, she could see herself not having enough confidence to step out of where she is and going for that big dream of hers, because she wouldn't have that confidence to do that. These are conversations that I am almost certainly that these women are not having with their partners. Or if they are doing at a very surface level. So these partners don't really understand the level of pain that these women are living. And one thing that I always say is every time that I have a conversation with a woman who is thinking about joining my program, because we get in these levels of deep conversation, I want the husbands to be part of the call. If they need to be part of the decision making, if the wives need their support, be that emotional or financial, the husband needs to be part of the call. And the reason for that is because for two reasons. Reason number one, if somebody wants to be part of the decision making, in my mind, they have to be part of the process to truly understand. Because I cannot begin to tell you how many calls I have gotten with the husbands being on the call as well, that they had no idea how badly their wives were struggling. Oblivious. That's not their fault. That's not the husband's fault. because the way they are perceiving, oh, it's just a joke. Every time that she complains about feeling yucky in her body, oh, she's just being funny. But she's not being funny. I can tell you that right now. And whenever a man is a man enough and he's a leader to be part of the process and understand and listen and communicate effectively and be able to put themselves in their wife's shoes and see how badly they are struggling, that is leadership. But I digress. Let's go back to the ladies who might not have that. So those women are telling me about all their struggles, but their husbands made the active choice to not be part of the process. And there was this lady, and I am so enraged by this because I think it is an absolute disrespect and a great example of blindly following someone. I make it very clear. If you are really thinking about moving forward and your husband needs to be part of the decision making, cool, bring him on. I want him to understand. I want him to be part of the process. Our most successful ladies, they had their husbands as part of the process. Shit, like I become friends with their husbands. You know, like we have Colin, Ryan, Alf, Rodney, Greg, Troy. These are just some of the men that were part of the process. They were solid dudes. They listened. They tried to understand what their wives were going through. And they put themselves in their wives' shoes to really see what it is that they could do to help. That is leadership. So back to the example. So I told this lady that I was going to get on a call with that if, her husband needed to be part of the decision making, cool, awesome, bring him along. I don't want anything to feel like a shady fucking business. I don't do shady business. Black is black, white's white. It ain't no gray. How much is your program? That is the only part that I can tell you because the program is fully customized. We have a number of professionals. We have a counselor. We have a registered dietitian. I don't know where you're at. You wouldn't go to a doctor and before you even set foot on an appointment and be like, yo, how much is the treatment going to cost? The doctor cannot tell you. Why? Because I haven't spoken to you yet. I give a range, but I can't tell how much it is because I don't know what you're going to need because everything that we do is fully customized. So she replied to my email after I had made it very clear that the husband needed to be part of the decision making so he could understand. I want the husbands to understand. I don't want to hide anything. So she replies, and I quote, I spoke with my husband at length yesterday after our initial call. He fully supports financial investment if I decide it is best for myself. Therefore, he is joining our call tomorrow. Excited about continuing the conversation with you. What this person is telling me is that their husband has given the green light to trust her judgment on what she believes is best for her. Okay? We get on a call. She is like, oh my goodness, this is great. This is exactly what I need. Let's move forward. Cool. Awesome. Let's go. She then tells me a couple hours later that she spoke with her husband and her husband all of a sudden became concerned and that she had to have a refund. I called and I spoke with her that he had not authorized her to make an investment without consulting him first. Now, I don't care about other people's marriage. It ain't my fucking business. All right? But as an educated, independent woman who also respects my husband's leadership, talking about me, I respect my husband's leadership. I think he's a smart, solid dude. But if my husband looks at me and tells me that he trusts my judgment, and then he throws a fit like a little bitch because I have not ran things by him after he tells me that he trusts my judgment, I am sorry, my friend, but this is not leadership. This is dictatorship. Because as a business owner, if I tell somebody who I work with that I trust their judgment to make a call, and after they make that call, I tell them that I no longer trust their judgment and that they should have ran it by me, that is not leadership. That is micromanagement. And I will never, ever regardless of the money. Keep the money. I don't care. I've refunded all the money. I'm like, keep it, boo. All yours. Oh, I will reach back out whenever we are able to sort things out. Please don't. Do not. Do not reach out to me. Do you know why? Because I'm never going to be able to properly coach this woman. Because there's always going to be that lingering lack of trust that her husband has made very clear that he does not have on her, or anything that she thinks will work for her. But this is a pattern that I see day in and day out. There is a huge difference between leadership and dictatorship. And if you look on the internet, what is the difference between leadership and dictatorship? And you're going to be surprised because the difference is not very big. But whenever you're talking about the action, you can definitely see that. The results are quite staggering because it is, in fact, a very fine line. And with the constant message that women have to follow the leadership, at what point does it become a lack of autonomy to make decisions on what do you think it is best for you and for your body, especially when the person who is supposed to be, quote unquote, your leader refuses to be part of the process? That right there is my biggest problem. As part of leadership, be that on a work setting, be that in a business setting, be that on a personal setting, is to listen, is to be part of the process and to understand what it is that that person is struggling with. Okay? This specific lady has been struggling for the past 7 years. 7 years she has been struggling. How many more years, how many more experiences, how many more stages of life are going to have to go through until she decides that it's time for her to take ownership? Because here's what happened though. This is something that we have seen time and time again. Women who get at a later stage of life and they look back, and it's a life of regret. It's a life of memories not being properly created with their loved ones, with their kids, or with their career, a lack of ascension in their career, lack of memories with their kids. They don't even have pictures to show for because they allowed circumstances, people, their spouse, their boss, their kids to make choices for them. I cannot make a choice for someone if I don't really understand, even if it is my child, if I do not understand exactly what is going on, if I do not understand the impact that that's having on my child's life. As a parent, you are a leader, but I cannot make that decision for my child if I do not understand. How is it any different whenever you have a spouse and you are struggling with something and your spouse refuses to be part of the process where you are going to explain verbatim, word by word, how that is impacting you? Yet that same person wants to be part of the decision making. How is it fair? How is it taking advantage of our inherited privilege of the freedom of choice, the freedom that we have of autonomy to decide what we believe is best for us, when the person that we trust the most is unwilling to be part of the decision making with us? How is this fair? How is it fair that you are going to live your life, or these women are going to live their lives for many years to come, allowing everybody and their mom to make decisions on their behalf, just so by the time they are in a puddle of fucking unhappiness? Because I have seen this time and time again, and that is what infuriates me. Because we have members in their 60s or 70s. They're just now realizing how much of their lives they have missed out on, how many memories they have missed out on, how many pictures they didn't take, how many opportunities they passed, how much of their lives was not lived because they allowed people who were not in tune with their struggles to make decisions on their behalf. How is this fair? It's not fair. And it's sad for me as a woman, as a mother. If I watched my daughter go through something like this, I would be enraged. And that's why I want to lead my child by example, by having a relationship where there is partnership. Yes, there is leadership by my husband. There is not a blind fellowship by me. I want to show my daughter that it is okay to ask questions. It is okay to speak up on your needs and to talk about what the things are that are troubling you. Because if somebody wants to be part of the decision making, they have to be part of the process so they can truly understand what it is that you're struggling with. These people are allowing somebody who has never walked a day in their shoes to make decisions on their behalf without listening to their struggles. And anybody here who works in sales is going to be like, oh, yeah, but like there's this smoking screen and like, I'm going to speak to my spouse. Oh, I know. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm well aware of that. But there is also those women, they are under false disguise of blind submission and blind fellowship that at some point is going to lead them to a cliff that is going to be very hard for them to pull themselves out of. And that is what I want this podcast to be, a way to help women avoid being led into that cliff. Because you know what? Sometimes not even the person leading knows that they're leading you down a fucking cliff. And that is the problem. That is the problem. Giving that much responsibility to someone that might unintentionally be leading you down a cliff because that person doesn't know what it is that you're struggling with. How is that fair? How does it not build resentment? How does that not lead to an unhappy marriage? How does it not lead to a terrible example to your children, your daughter, if you have one, in watching that blind submission that it is okay. You just put your head down and then you just follow the lead because that's what men's do and that's what women's do. Fuck that. I want my daughter to learn how to ask questions. There is nothing wrong with asking questions. There is nothing wrong with speaking up on your needs. There is nothing wrong with speaking up on what your boundaries are. There is nothing wrong on what speaking up, what is important to you. That does not make you less of a woman, despite of what people try to make you believe. Because if somebody does not understand what it is that you're struggling with, they can lead you down a cliff that you might not be able to pull yourself out of. And then once again, you're going to be blaming that person that didn't even know that that's where you were headed. So take advantage of that freedom that we have, that so many people have fought for us to have, because there are plenty of women around the world that do not have the same privilege that we do. And yet here we are, so many women with the freedom of choice, the freedom of questioning what it is, what is right and what is wrong, what is good for them and what is not good for them, and not taking full advantage of it. That is sad. That is a sad, sad, sad existence. And if this podcast can help one woman see things from a different perspective and understand that leadership and dictatorship, although the names sound very familiar, and on paper, the differences are very little. In action, the difference can have very long-term consequences. And I can tell you that because I've been a coach for 15 years. And whenever we work with women later in life, whenever they're in their 60s and 70s, there is a lot of story that we hear and that we listen to of could have, would have, should have. I wish I would have done this 20 years earlier. And if you are on your 30s or 40s, now is your time. Now is your time, because quite honestly, that is like getting to the middle of your life. And how much more of your life are you going to live under somebody else's expectation of what you should be, especially if you're not happy with where you are. If you're happy with where you are and everything is rainbows and butterflies, fuck, stay there. But if not, you have the power to change, and giving that power to somebody else is only going to brew resentment. So take action and communicate. And I want to take a moment to finish this up, because I know that a lot of our members of the Powerhouse Academy are going to be listening to this. And they really know how passionate about this topic I am, because it is something that I'm constantly talking about. I just want to give a shout out to all the awesome husbands that have been part of the process, that have, become my friends. Shit, like I've had a Zoom meeting with just the husband of one of our members because I wanted to learn a little bit more about her. And then I asked permission. Hey, can I speak to your husband? Because he's a big part of the process. Is that cool? Yeah, sure. I met with just the husband, Colin. Colin, you're the best. Thanks. Thanks for being awesome. Thanks for showing what leadership is. I wish there were more men like you. Ryan, Shelby's husband, solid dude, messages me on Instagram to tell me how proud of his wife he is. I have done an interview with both of these husbands, and the impact that I'm able to see, what the amount of support that they give their wives, the result speaks for itself. Greg, Sylvia's husband, awesome, solid dude. Alf, Rodney, Troy, my boy Troy, solid dude. Skeptical as hell, but sat there and listened to every single word that his wife had to say and truly understood. Johnny, holler, solid dude. Sat there on the call, asked questions, listened, learned a lot of things that he wasn't really sure, that wasn't happening, but he was a leader and a solid dude to sit there and listen and understand what it was that his wife was struggling with. That's what I'm talking about. This is not a man bashing podcast. It's a partnership encouragement podcast. It's a don't be blindly led and don't ask questions by podcast. So I wanted to give a shout out to these awesome partners, husbands who have been willing to be part of the process, and the results speak for themselves. Your wives are killing it. And if one of your ladies are listening, please show them that. I'm pretty sure they're going to be appreciative of this. Anyway, so I hope this podcast has been helpful. I might ruffle some feathers with it, but whatever. It is what it is. If you like this podcast, please share. I am incredibly passionate about this, and I just wanted to talk a bit more about this because I do find a lot of comfort in knowing that there is a possibility that this podcast can change at least one person's lives, and that's the purpose of it. So if you liked this episode, share with a friend, share on the socials, holler at me on the Instagrams at Nathalia Melo Fit. You can see the links down in the show notes, and I will speak to you later. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But let me ask you, what was your aha moment in today's episode? I would love to know. You can leave me a comment or voice message at the link in the show description. You can also follow me on Instagram and let me know what topics you want to hear more about or who I should have on the show. As for today, this is it for today, guys. I'll see you back next week for another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast.